My name is Nicole. I'm a producer for the Remembering Them podcast. The podcast is a platform for people to share stories and memories of their loved ones who have passed away. The podcast was created in memory of Dad, Bob Cecil. May he rest in peace. Your host, Mark, Ryan, and Luke acknowledge the rich history and importance of storytelling within the indigenous culture.
My name is Jorgi Skiing, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. Today we're meeting in Meanjin, and those traditional owners are the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge my people, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in today.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. You are with Mark and Mark only on a solo recording today. Luke and Ryan are away, perhaps in Japan or perhaps at time of release or date of release of this will be the Wednesday, the 8th of April here in Australia, which is actually Draw a Bird Day, mainly celebrated in the States. It encourages people to draw birds. Started as a sweet story about cheering up a sick child and grew into a yearly creative tradition. And as regular watchers will know, that Ryan is very, very fond of birds. He's a big, big bird guy and will often have his pet bird on his shoulder during recording. So enjoy the day, guys. Hopefully you are enjoying drawing birds together. How very sweet, and looking forward to having you back for the next episode. Where we are today, we won't do a guessing game because I don't have the guys here to guess, but we're actually in Lennox, South Dakota. Lennox is a small, welcoming town in southeastern South Dakota, known for its strong farming community, quiet rural lifestyle, and close-knit local spirit. Today's guest is a junior high English teacher married to a fellow teacher, Kruse. She's a mum of three boys, Paxton, Pryor, and a son, Pruitt, who we will be discussing today, unfortunately. She finds comfort in journaling, spending time outdoors, camping with her family, and working through their foundation. Despite being passionate about sharing her story, she admits she still has a fear of public speaking. Our guest today from Lennox in South Dakota is Jordan Kruse. So, welcome to the Remembering Them podcast officially, Jordan. Thank you very much for joining us all the way over from South Dakota, Lennox, the city in South Dakota in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I know we mentioned just before we pressed record that your hands are full as a teacher, as a mom. If you'd like to jump in, and thank you for organising that time and around your busy schedule. If you'd like to jump in by telling us who we're unfortunately talking about today, what happened to them, and yeah, a little bit about that special loved one.
Yeah, so my husband and I have a third son, Pruitt, who unfortunately passed away in May of 2024. And he was born with a rare metabolic condition that I passed down to him, but I did not know that I was a carrier for this disease until my son was diagnosed. So it was a lot of information thrown at us right off the bat once we found out. He was born healthy. We were sent home on, he was born the 17th, and then we were sent home the 19th, and we weren't even home less than 24 hours, and we were rushing him back to the hospital because he was just refusing to nurse. He was lethargic. He was making uncomfortable breathing noises, and so we brought him in, and they started running tests on him, and they assumed that what he was having was some kind of bacterial or viral infection. And so they were doing their regular protocols and things like that. Um, but unfortunately, he had something genetic, and so we had kind of a delayed response as far as trying to figure out what he actually had going on with him. And so his ammonia levels crept up into the thousands, and they're supposed to be under 72. So that caused significant damage to his liver and, as a result, his brain as well. So, yeah, Pruitt's our third kiddo. But he's got two older brothers, Paxton, who is 8, and then Pryor, who is just turned 4.
Yeah. And the boys are totally fine with
Yep,
you
the
looking
other
at it?
two were tested shortly after we found out Pruitt's diagnosis, and they are in the clear. They do not have it. So I'm the only one in my family that is a carrier, and then obviously Pruitt's affected. So.
Yeah. And that was that passed to you from your family, Jordan? Or how?
So, nope. So I was de novo. My mom got tested and she came back negative. All of my sisters I've got 3 sisters, they got tested as well. They came back negative. My dad just recently got tested for it as well, but the likelihood of him having it and passing it down to me is like very, very slim because if he were to have it, he would have presented like my son as well, and he probably wouldn't have survived given that he's in his 50s and medical care was very different 50 years ago. So, yep.
Wow.
So we're assuming right now that I'm a de novo case, but there's that small chance that maybe my dad has it too, but the
Yeah.
likelihood of that is
Pretty
slim to
unlikely. Yeah.
yeah.
So de novo meaning that you didn't inherit it and you're at
Yep.
zero day one, I guess.
Yep. So essentially that means my parents didn't pass it to me, so I was just a genetic mutation. So um since I'm a carrier, I some carriers are affected and some are not. So right now I'm 33 or going to be 33, and I haven't shown any symptoms my entire life. But there are some carriers who have shown symptoms. But
Later in life, as it.
some have them earlier in life, some are later. Yeah, everybody's situation's very different. So I've heard
Yeah.
some that um, have figured out after the fact of having a child themselves that they're carriers and they had no clue, but then they start showing symptoms later in life. Some have shown symptoms, but it was never enough to cause extreme, severe impacts. And so they were able to still continue life as normal. They just maybe
Right.
had like um, headaches, brain fog, um, like simple things that you could chalk up to other things.
Yeah.
Um, so whereas neonatal, like my son, is very severe and will can present with seizures, coma, um, refusal to eat, lethargy, headaches, confusion. Um, some people notice like behavioral changes. And then just like adults, you can notice that maybe they'll have like a food aversion to protein.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
is it a case where it presents in adults, the body is developed enough to battle through or fight through whatever symptoms, or depending, I guess, on the severity?
I think it just depends on the severity and the mutation that each like individual has. But the common thread is usually a neonatal is more severe, whereas if you have it in your childhood, you can manage it a little bit better, but there's still lots of life-threatening, complications that can come with it with the management. But if it's a later onset, most people can seem to manage it with medication and things like that.
Yeah.
So. But
And
liver transplants are kind of the route to go if you are constantly having medical crises and things like that.
yeah. And for Pruitt, just too small, too,
So
to.
yeah, we went the route to get his like liver transplant evaluation. We just weren't able to get him the transplant in time. There was just complications that happened throughout that process. So you do have to wait for baby to obviously be large enough before they can, have a transplant and stuff since it's a major operation. But for him, it, wa- time didn't work out in our favor.
Yeah.
So.
And how long did did you have with Pruitt? Was he in this waiting period, I guess, from you? You know, as you said, 2 days after birth, you were able to return home and then figured out that something was wrong very quickly, took him back, and then the diagnosis. What was that period to, finding out and then to him actually passing?
Yeah, so we found out in May of 2024, and we were hospitalized for over 40 days before we were sent home again. And that process was just a mixture of things, getting him stable, trying to find a um, mix of like a regimen that um, kept him stable. So a mixture of medications, and then his diet was very strict. The protein load, obviously, you as a human need protein to grow and develop, but for patients with OTC, it can also be detrimental if you have too much protein. So it was just a very big case of trying to manage how much protein was safe for him while, but also allowing him to grow. So we were in the hospital for 40 days. We were finally discharged, but we were still in and out of the hospital. I think we averaged having an admission at least 1 to 2 times a month. But we were going in weekly for ammonia labs and weight checks and just like regular check-ins and things with him. So his last hospital stay, when was it? It would have been November 7th is when we went in for his last hospital stay, and things just kind of went south. And then he passed away the 22nd in November. So he lived, trying to think, just a few days after his 6 month
Six
mark.
months. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
five
what
days.
what was that period like for you and the family? And I'm also thinking about his brothers who would have, I guess, just thrown them into a bit of, because as most parents would know, routine, but I'm assuming absolutely no routine with this situation with Pruitt. You know, if it's a hospital visit, then everything sort of goes out the window. What was that period like for the
Yeah.
family?
So, I mean, like bringing home any baby, I mean, comes with, obstacles, hurdles, very little routine because the sleep schedule, like all the things. But adding in the medical diagnosis, and then luckily for us, during that time, my husband and I are both teachers, so we had that summer period off, so that did help us a little bit. Um, but that structure for the boys, our oldest two, it was all over the place. We're blessed having both our families close and nearby, so we had a lot of support as far as if we were in the hospital, the boys were either with an aunt or an uncle or grandparents or somebody. Um, but it was pure chaos, those,
Mm.
especially that first month and a half after, getting the diagnosis and just getting stable and stuff. Once we returned home, we started getting a little bit of stability, and routine, but like you said, we'd still have to make hospital visits and things like that. So just, it was just a lot to process, and it was a lot for the boys because any baby that you have, time is then taken away from them, but add in all the medical care and medications and things like that. They kind of got the back burner on things when it came to time with mom and dad, because Pruitt did take up an intense amount of our time with his medical management. But they they seemed to handle it okay. Um, at first, like those first couple weeks, it was like kind of freedom for them. They got to have free roam. Grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles were spoiling them, but then it was just like, okay, we really gotta start reining it in and start getting that routine back for them. And at that point, I think they realized, okay, this isn't as great as it was at the start. And they
Yeah.
were missing us a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What about post Pruitt passing? We've often spoken to parents that have other young children that they need to talk through that situation. What was that like? And also for yourself, for you and your husband, what was that grief like afterwards?
Yeah.
This is a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Hey Luke and Ryan, life gets heavy sometimes, especially when grief hits. For me, that weight often shows up as anxiety.
Yeah, it's not always one big thing. Sometimes it's just life piling up, work, relationships, trying to hold it all together. Suddenly, I'm anxious and don't know why.
Totally. I used to think anxiety meant panic attacks, but for me, it's more like overthinking every choice or feeling like I'm never doing enough.
And it can even hit on good days. Out of nowhere, I'm spiraling over things that haven't even happened yet.
It's easy to feel alone in it, but you're not.
That's why we're talking about our paid partner, BetterHelp.
BetterHelp connects you with credentialed therapists who can help manage anxiety and more.
Most people go to BetterHelp for anxiety, and 69% feel better after just 6 weeks.
Getting started is simple. Fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist. If it's not a fit, you can switch at any time.
Their support team is super responsive, and with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 Trustpilot rating, it's a platform you can count on.
So let BetterHelp help manage your anxiety so it doesn't manage you.
Click the link below or go to betterhelp.com/rememberingthem for 10% off your first month.
Yeah, so with our kiddos, we were pretty open with at least Paxton because he was 7 at the time, 8 now. Um, and he needs to be in the know. He does not like to be in the dark. So we tailored things down to his, knowledge level, but we were pretty open with him and made it clear to him that Pruitt was very sick and that there is the likelihood that we would be in the hospital, things could not turn out the way we hoped. Um, Whereas prior, we didn't really have those types of conversations because he was just 3. And so he really didn't he just couldn't grasp the concept of it as easily. But Paxton, we did. But after Pruitt's passing, prior didn't really understand that Pruitt was gone because I think he was so used to Pruitt being at the hospital that he just associated Pruitt being gone meant that he was still at the hospital. So I don't know, it took a couple months for him to, I think, click that, oh, he's not coming back. And so the concept of death was very confusing, I think, for him. Paxton understood, and he's our sentimental, emotional one. And so it hit him pretty well. He was pretty open about missing him, and we noticed behavioral changes in him, like acting out and things, which what we've been told from other families who've experienced it, that's kind of the trend for his age range. He was talking to someone for a little bit, but we've been able to have those conversations at home, I think, um, to keep him under wraps, but things have definitely gotten better. But he'll still make comments about missing him and just, missing his brother and wish he had both brothers and just being sad. I think so. As far as my husband and I, we definitely grieve very differently. I'm more open about talking about it with others. I will talk about Pruitt and talk people's ears off all the time, whereas my husband, he's more of a silent griever. Um, I don't know if it's just more of a man type of response because they feel like they need to be strong and not show those emotions, but he's definitely grieving in his own way. I think he processes it through working out and taking care of himself in that way. Um, but he's not one that will have conversations with other people about it other than me outside. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there around that people grieve in different ways, and we certainly stereotypically, just a huge generalization here, that men are typically like your husband, and you can just tell by the sheer numbers that we guests, unfortunately, we have on the podcast are mostly women being more open and willing to talk about it. But he'll, I'm sure, manage in his own way. In terms of advice, Jordan, for anyone that may go through something similar to yourself, with the loss of a child, what sort of advice would you give to people that might go through something similar that has helped you through this period?
For me, I first when Pruitt passed away, I mean, I took some time to myself at home on bereavement, and it was just my husband and I. But after a few weeks had passed and things, we did, or I did, I jumped into like grief groups and things like that. And I found that helpful, especially at the very beginning and the very, I don't like early stages of grief. I don't attend as much now, but during that first year after Pruitt's passing, I did attend frequently, and that I felt like talking to others was very helpful, because I don't really know anybody personally that has also lost a child. So being able to speak with other people that are having the same or similar feelings and emotions, and questions and thoughts, and being able to see other people experiencing those same things and just hearing other people talk made me feel less crazy. Um, but with that, it can also come with trials because I feel like listening to other people have conversations and talk, you also get to have the obstacle of, comparing your grief to other people's grief, like, oh, I'm not grieving hard enough, or I'm not, or I'm grieving too much, or things like that. So you also have to remember that everybody responds to grief differently and loss differently. So just trying to not compare how you're grieving to how other people are grieving because we all just respond differently.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and just based off the conversations we've been fortunate enough to have with a lot of different people is that it's important to find that community if you're wanting to find that connection to I guess not feel alone in your grief, but also absolutely spot on in that there's no comparison that you should be feeling one way because that person is at some point with their grief or whatever it might be. So it is really important to remember that, and I'm glad you've identified that very quickly by the sounds of it.
I mean,
The Remembering Them podcast is supported by My Legacy Message. How do you want to be remembered? My Legacy Message provides a service that delivers a personalized keepsake video to your loved ones, often as a surprise after you pass. My Legacy Message, be remembered.
it took a while, but you figure it out as you go, and grief just ebbs and flows, and you learn as you go.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
still learning a lot.
yeah. There's no handbook, unfortunately, to
No, I
how it's
wish
at.
there was.
Jordan, how do you and the family remember Pruitt today? And that might dovetail into the foundation and the work that you do there.
Yeah, so my husband and I did start a foundation shortly after Pruitt. Um, and that's one of our way of just carrying out his legacy. Um, and so we help other families in our community that are also facing medical hardship. And that's kind of just our way of giving back to the community that was very supportive of us when we were going through. Um, our time with Pruitt and our challenges and things like that. And it's also our way of helping raise awareness for the rare condition that Pruitt passed away from. So, other than that, I feel like we honor him through just like everyday things that we do in our life. I try to live in the moment more, because I feel like he taught us that we're not guaranteed, this abundance of time. He only got 6 months, so we could be gone tomorrow. So just taking in and soaking in those moments with family, um, is just like very important. Holidays, we honor him, and we made new traditions and things, which was hard with like we had traditions that we were already doing, and now we're incorporating new ones, and kind of our traditions are shifting now that we've lost a child. Um, and our families have been really great about, honoring those things too. So
Yeah,
it's been a variety of things.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Is there something around um, So with the foundation, sorry, and we'll absolutely include those details in the notes. So it's supporting the families that are in a similar position that might need assistance,
Yeah.
financially. Yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
name of the foundation? Sorry, Jordan. I think.
The Brave Little One Foundation. So it
Yeah.
actually stems from my son's name. So the derived meaning of Pruitt means brave little one. So that's where that kind of came from. And then our logo is a sloth because that was just kind of his spirit animal that we associated with him. So
Oh, that's cool. It's a good
yeah.
way to continue on his short legacy, and to ensure that he's remembered as well. But also, I love
Yeah.
that you're able to support other families that, as you said, you were fortunate to have community around you with your family. So the people that may not
Mhm.
have that, I think it's a really beautiful thing and a great way to remember Pruitt. Um, Speaking of remembering Pruitt, this might be a difficult one because he had, unfortunately, such a short period of time with us or with you. Was there anything in that short time that you will remember him by, or how would you describe him? Yeah, again, sorry, it's a very, very hard one, I'm sure, being 6 months old, but are things there that either you or you and your family remember him by?
Yeah, so he gave a really mean side eye.
Okay.
Like he would give the nurses, family members, if he didn't like something, you knew by his mean mug side eye that he'd give us.
Okay.
And that will forever stick with us. It was just like perfect. I mean, you could just tell he was like you said, we only had 6 months with him, but I think if he would have continued on, he would have just been, very sassy and stubborn.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
was also a very easygoing baby. Like, regardless of all the medical complexities that he had, I would say out of all three of our boys, he was the easiest to handle. Like, I, he was just an
Just,
easygoing baby.
yeah.
He would
Yeah.
sleep fine. I mean, he was pretty content most of the time. I mean, towards the end, he would obviously have his spells and things, but a lot of it stemmed from because of his brain damage and things like that. So, I, yeah, he was just easy to care for, easy to love.
Yeah. Often the case with the youngest one, they can show some real attitude, but also on that flip, be very easygoing as well, and just go with the flow, which
Yeah.
absolutely, obviously not wish this on anyone, but if there is someone that needs to go through what Pruitt goes through, that type of personality, I guess, kind of maybe helps with it. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which is a strange thing to say. You spoke before about lessons, Jordan, and living in the moment and enjoying time with family. Are there other lessons from either Pruitt's, 6 months that you had him, or also around the grief process, lessons you've taken from that, aside from what you mentioned before around, enjoying the moments and I guess being mindful of the fragility and of life.
hmm Yeah. I would say on top of just living in the moment and just, taking in and just being grateful what you ha with what you have. I would say bravery was like a big piece of, not only when Pruitt was here, but after. Um, he handled so much in his 6 months of life that most people don't even experience in their entire life. And just him taking on that with such, resilience and bravery. I feel like that's kind of now what I try to do going forward. Like this podcast, I probably wouldn't have done that prior to Pruitt. Like I would have been too afraid and I would have said, nope, I'm not going to do it. I was asked to speak at a event, and old Jordan definitely wouldn't have done that. I would have said, absolutely not. I'm not speaking in front of adults, but instead I'm doing things that are more out of my comfort zone. And I don't think if I would have had Pruitt, I probably wouldn't be doing these things that I am doing now. As well as like the foundation and stuff. That's not something I probably would have done if Pruitt didn't
Mm.
exist. So just being more fearless and taking more chances, and just not being afraid to make mistakes, I guess, is kind of something that we I learned through that process. As far as grief related, oh, I feel like one of the largest challenges especially during like the initial shock of Pruitt passing, I obsessed over like the what if this happened, or what if I did this, or if I would have chose to do this in his care and things like that. I focus so heavily on the what ifs, and I still do. I still go back to that. I mean, I think everybody has those questions. Um, but I feel like one of the things that I learned in my grief groups that I'm trying to apply more into my life is rather than focusing on the what if, but more of what now. And so I'm trying to, I don't know, look forward more rather
Mm.
than what could I have done? Because no matter what, God's plan was God's plan, no matter what I was going to choose. Whatever choices we made during his medical care, it wasn't going to make a difference.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
that totally makes sense. Yeah, I think it's quite common, quite normal, quite natural for people to question those what if moments. Have we tried everything? Could we have done something differently? But as you mentioned, if you know, dwell on that, it can become quite unproductive. But I like the what now situation, and I think you're absolutely doing that through the foundation and all the work that you do, and talking about him. I think that's really important as well. We talk to a lot of people that it is important for. If it's within your comfort zone, obviously it's maybe different for your husband, but if you're willing to talk about him, keep his legacy alive that way, and I think that helps with the
yeah,
grief process as well. It certainly helps the three of us, hosts on the podcast, talk about our loved ones and keeping their legacy alive. So absolutely keep doing what you're doing, Jordan. I have one final question for you for the main part of the podcast. It's often the most difficult one, so take care with and be kind to yourself with this question. And granted, it's not quite been 2 years, a little bit over a year, hasn't it? Yeah, since
yep,
Brett's passing, and also maybe that added layer of difficulty with him being 6 months old. But we often ask the last question we ask people on the podcast is if Pruitt was in front of you today, what would you say to him?
I don't even think I'd even say anything. I would just snuggle the crap out of him. I wouldn't have to say anything. I don't think words would even, I think our embrace and our, you know, just hug and cuddles and snuggles would say it all. I don't think I'd have to say a single word. But if I could, it would, oh gosh, that's so hard. I mean, obviously I'd tell him I miss him and that save a place for me in heaven. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one.
It is a hard one. Thank you. And look, there's no like with the whole grief situation. There's no right or wrong, and it's totally individual. And
Yeah.
yeah, an embrace and a big hug would be totally fine.
Mhm. Yeah. And like for me with Pruitt, I mean, he was 6 months old, so we never really had a two-way conversation. It was always me just talking to the wind, basically, and
So,
hoping he's understanding what I'm saying. So,
talking to him and copping side eyes by the sounds of it.
yes, yes.
Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I'm sure your conversation remembering Pruitt will help people in the physical with the foundation, with the work that you're doing, but also even just this story will help someone out there perhaps going through something similar, perhaps different in their own grief. So thank you very much for coming on and giving up your time and sharing.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I'm hoping that he's remembered and that people can hopefully gather something from me. Not that I am an expert in grief by any means, but I'm hoping maybe someone can relate. So
None of us on this call are. We're just bumbling through this and hoping we can help people.
yeah.
Thank you so much. So, listeners, that was Jordan from Lennox in South Dakota. Um, yeah, what a difficult situation, and again, one that I don't know that we've had someone with OTC, um, the metabolic super rare metabolic disorder by the sounds of it. I don't believe we've had someone pass away due to that. So another first for us, which is amazing after all these conversations that we've had. So thank you to Jordan for coming on to the podcast and sharing that. I mentioned in the Patreon to her that it's really impressive that she's self-confessed quite an introverted person, but following Pruitt's life and his passing, that she's able to take some positives out of that and be able to talk about him and continue on his legacy by doing things like this podcast, and also the Brave Little One Foundation as well. And we'll certainly share information about that in the podcast notes. Speaking of the Patreon, we did chat to Jordan about a few things around differences with self and her husband, processing grief, and also we touched on faith and also feelings of guilt. So it was a really good conversation for another 5-10 minutes in the Patreon. So if you'd like to support the podcast and get access to that, it's $6 a month US, about $9 a month Australian. Which gives you exclusive access to that content, but also it's a way to support the podcast as well. There's also a lot of free content on Patreon, so jump on patreon.com/remembering them podcast. There's an app as well where you can listen to a lot of free content, some questions and more lighthearted stuff that we release weekly, but certainly those exclusive chats are behind the paywall if you want to support the podcast. Reminder, we also have the partnership with BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/remembering them, which gives you 10% off your first month subscription to speak to a credentialed therapist, betterhelp.com/remembering them. Also, we have the My Legacy Message service, mylegacymessage.com.au, where you can look to record a message, and which is often delivered as a surprise to your loved ones after you pass. Another support of the podcast. And last but not least, please share this episode and any other episodes that you think may help someone else with this conversation with Jordan about Pruitt. It was wonderful hearing about him. Unfortunate, obviously, hearing about him, but wonderful hearing about all the work that Jordan and the family are doing post his passing, and continuing his legacy and keeping his memories alive. So please share this episode. Jump on your preferred listening platform and give us a rating and a review. 5 stars ideally, so we show up on anyone searching for a grief conversation. And also follow us on our socials, Instagram being the main one, also on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you very much for listening to me in this solo episode. Hopefully we have the boys back soon, so they can help me with these conversations. But thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode, and looking forward to the next grief conversation. Love you. Bye.
The Remembering Them podcast is created for entertainment purposes. Mark, Ryan, and Luke are not licensed mental health professionals. If you would like to discuss your mental well-being, several resources are available in Australia. Information about these services are available in the podcast notes. Please take the time to contact your loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate and love them.